We'll start today's LEGO City update with the road construction, then move on to the rail connection for the industrial area, and in the end add an abandoned factory where counterfeit money is being printed by the mafia, extending that storyline. But first, let's begin with the roads, and of course not everything will be straight this time either. We're starting with another curved section using a slightly updated building technique compared to a few months ago. This time the road is connected and looped back on both sides, making it much easier to handle. To install that section, I first built a straight road piece, also with those sort of spikes. That's the counterpart to the curved part, so they can hook together easily. It's a technique I'll definitely use from now on, since it's so much more practical, not just for building, but also for transport and maintenance, an absolute upgrade. This little corner in the back will probably become a parking space, most likely for the mafia boss or some high-ranking member, I guess. And I've already planned the layout a bit further. On the edge there, the road ends in a sort of ramp. That's because the rest of the industrial area sits slightly higher for construction reasons, and I figured it's a good way to transition up to the next level. To close the gaps along the curved road, I'm using wedge plates. It looks super clean once it's done. We'll have to see how it looks with tiles in the end, since those pieces only come as plates and not completely studless, but that's a problem for later on. On the other side of the road, I fortunately immediately know how to finish it, again with wedge plates, and this time in dark tan, since that's the base for the rail bed that will go on top, and it worked out perfectly because I used the exact same cut plates and wedge plates as on the opposite side, so I can match the angles exactly. The rest of the area will be covered in dark tan as a base. You can see larger studded patches. Those are already prepared for vegetation later. Trust me, there's nothing more annoying than not having enough studs when you want to add plants to an empty surface. It has happened before. The rail bed itself is built in dark bluish gray using 4x6 plates, and along the edges I've used cut plates to keep the design consistent. I've actually seen Kenosi Labs do it in a similar way and thought it looked great. It's definitely more work than simply adding the large sleepers I used in the main LEGO City, but it's absolutely worth it. I have to admit that. Building it is a pain, especially when adding switches, but it's satisfying once it's done. Anything curved or not fixed by studs has to be prepared with tiles in the base layer, so the studs don't get in the way. For all the curved parts, you need a special technique again. I'll show it roughly using this curved track and then apply it to the switch in a similar way. The goal is to fill all the gaps, and for that you usually try to use as many normal plates as possible, especially these 2x3 plates in the middle, then gutter elements along the inner part of the curve as well as in the middle once you turn it over. We'll do that in just a second. First of all, I'm adding these triangular plates on top, and now here come the gutter elements. This now acts as a foundation for the sleepers we'll add in just a second. That same method now applies to the switch. Anything not connected by studs sits on top of the tiles. I think now you can see why I really don't enjoy this technique. It's really tedious work. Then of course all the gaps on the straight section have to be filled once everything is connected to the base plates. For that I'm using 2x4 plates, and then finally the edges have to be cleaned up as well using some cut tiles as well as cheese slopes. And now here comes the most rewarding part, adding the sleepers. And now you can also see why I've added these gutter elements before, because they now hold up the tiles, and within a few minutes of adding these sleepers everything looks super clean. Straight sections are of course much more enjoyable to build, especially once the gaps are filled. It actually goes quickly. The prep work is the tough part though, especially since we added the switch. We now have 3 separate tracks to build. That's when things really start. First, everything between them is covered in dark tan again. Another switch will come soon, unfortunately, but first we'll handle the straights. After that, I could add the cut plates and wedge plates once again. I spared you the fiddling with the switch this time. It was the exact same as I've shown you earlier, just mirrored in this case. Then the straight section gets installed and locked onto the studs. That's something I didn't do in the rest of the city, as I've mentioned earlier, but we're using the finer, much better looking sleepers in this city expansion part for the industrial area. Now comes filling work once again. At this point, my fingers honestly hurt from building too much Lego. Trust me, these Lego studs have really rough surfaces, and that's why I was quite happy to be able to continue building the sleepers next. For now, I'm still using reddish brown for the sleepers. However, I'm thinking about mixing in some dark brown in future, just to make the tracks look a bit more used and older. But for now, I'd say enough of building train tracks, it's time for something new, a new building and with it some storytelling. I've already prepared this section here, which will get a small front garden, so we can add a bit of variety to the vegetation, but obviously that's not what we're focusing on today. We're diving straight into the new building. This is the base, and I have to admit, I filmed the entire speed build of that building as I was building and designing it, since so many of you constantly ask for that, but for some unknown weird reason I accidentally deleted the footage from the memory card, and so I reassembled it in bigger chunks so you can at least get a sense of what the new building looks like and how it's built. This one used to be an old factory hall, complete with a chimney we'll attach later. It's now being repurposed for the counterfeit money storyline. One feature I really wanted to include was a pair of slanted roofs, the kind you often see in industrial areas to let in some light into the building. It was an absolute must-have for me. The base I'm working on here on the left is the foundation for the chimney. I'll of course also show you how that is built once we install the new structure into the industrial area. Let's move inside, because this is where the counterfeit printing press makes its long-awaited comeback. We started that storyline 4 years ago, and honestly, the design of the printer from back then is a bit outdated by now, so I figured it was time for a proper big industrial fake money printer. The idea is that back in the corner, stacks of blank green bills are piled up, basically the raw material. I built it with jumper plates so you can clearly see the separation in between each layer. Here are our workers still wearing the exact same outfit they've had for years now. On the other side of the printer, where the conveyor belt runs, another worker sorts the freshly printed bills. And yes, making a return as well, the bribed police officer inspecting the bills through a magnifying glass to make sure the quality is good enough that they don't immediately look fake. Now it's your turn again, because here's a new business partner working with our mafia boss, and how that partnership plays out. Maybe some sort of trade deal. This is entirely up to you. Definitely let me know your ideas in the comments. Once the building is closed up, normally the windows that are installed would probably be tinted or darkened, but in our case, especially when it's lit up from the inside, I actually want you to be able to see what's going on inside, because otherwise, where's the whole point of adding interiors when you can't even get a glance of it? And with that being done, it's now finally time to place the new building into the industrial area. Here's the first proper look at the chimney. I built it using curved slopes to get the rounded shape, 2 gutter pieces at the bottom, 1 in the middle and none on top, so it narrows slightly as it goes up. You of course can't make it perfectly smooth, but I think with those 3 layers in total, it looks really good. Next up is the exterior, where I started adding some cracked pavement. The idea is that the industrial district is divided into 2 sections. One where the counterfeiters shut things down, and one in the back where it's still active and well maintained. In that area, the old cobblestone was simply paved over with asphalt. This is the idea of that look I was going for. There's still a lot missing in the back area. For example, the pipe needs to be extended. I decided to route it back to the blast furnace. Since there'll be filter systems installed, we'll be building those later though. For now, I want to focus on smaller exterior details. So far, the outside has been pretty bare, and that definitely needs to change. For the first time, I built a shipping container, an absolute must-have for any industrial area. And of course, I didn't stop at 1. There'll be probably like 10 or 12 in total, in different colors. For now, I've made 3. They're super quick to build since they're all identical, and those large molded elements make the process even faster. I'll place them around the side, maybe leave some open, but we'll see how that turns out later on. I also added pallets, empty barrels. Can't have enough empty barrels standing around, and street lights. The lights are done in a slightly older style to match the rest of the Lego city. And back to the storytelling, while the counterfeiters are at work inside, outside, the mafia bosses from different families are meeting to discuss deals and divide up the city. There's a whole lot more coming regarding the storytelling, but for now the main thing was to establish this new headquarters. After working on some vegetation, I also went back to finish what we started earlier, filling the gaps in between the tracks. I used a mixture of dark green, mostly for the bushes, and olive green. Those colors work fantastic together, and especially on the dark tan ground, olive green and dark green are the colors to go for. And now I think this is the first time you can actually already see the landscape coming together. The next part I'm going to add is a harbor to import coal, especially for the blast furnace, of course, to power that up. And then I'm currently planning out how exactly I wanted to have the industrial area connect to the Lego City. But that's a whole different story, and this will, of course, still take us time until we connect everything. But regarding the main city, I have my all-time longest and biggest video planned for the next days. Just so you're prepared for that, you can expect a 2.5-hour Lego City video with all the building progress we've done so far, recut, structured, and sped up. This is what I've been working on for the past weeks. And with that being said, that's it for today's video. I really hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you again in the next one.